Hi, it's been a while. Welcome to the March recap. What is there to say? Okay, so it's already April 4th. I do apologize for this video not coming out sooner. I'm pretty sure it came out at a pretty decent time last month. Maybe the 4th or the 5th or something like that. Now I'm recording on the 4th and I'm gonna have to edit my ass off the next day or so to try and get this out to you guys because I feel really bad for not recording this sooner. It's been a really rough week for me. Generally speaking, I haven't really been home much, and also I've been working a lot, my real job, which has just been hard. One of the main reasons I'm trying to do this YouTube thing is because I don't think I'm built for the 9 to 5. Let me just put it out there. I don't think I'm fucking built for that shit. Can I do it? Certainly. Have I proven able to do it? Certainly. Do I enjoy it, and is it good for my brain development? Not really. Not really. Not that my brain is developing anymore. Hey, I'm about to be 26 years old, bro. The frontal lobe development is done. Whatever I'm left with up here, this is what I'm left with. Whatever's been cooking for the last several years, this is the final fucking product. Okay, so this March, there's not as much as I wanted to say as there was last month. Maybe I just didn't do my internet research enough. Everything that I've been keeping up with has been pretty minimal. It's been a sad month. A month full of a lot of death, which of course we're going to cover, but stuff that I'm also not going to be saying much about. However, there is one topic that has had me very perplexed and that I think I'm going to be able to provide some kind of outlook that nobody else has possibly given. I doubt that because everybody's been talking about this. I'm sure somebody somewhere has some tweet that's gonna summarize exactly what I'm going to be saying later on in this video, but nonetheless, there's only one huge thing that I have to talk about, to the point where I even wrote a piece of something to be able to read to you guys. That's another thing about these videos, is that they are technically off dome so that it's easier for me, but this video might be harder for me because I'm going to be sober for it. I'm gonna be sober, so I don't know how far the babbling will take me today, but I think I could finesse it. Where is my chancleta? I also would like to, before we go any further in the video, beat the Squishmallow allegations. These are not my Squishmallows, okay? Do I look like some kind of soy boy cuck to you? These are not my Squishmallows. They are not my Squishmallows. But now that we have all that out of the way, let's get into the March recap. The first thing that caught my radar that I wrote down the moment I was preparing for the March recap, Super Mega's back. Now, if you don't know, Super Mega is a YouTube channel where they create all kinds of shit, from podcasts to gaming content to content where they're smoking weed and gaming at the same time. I've been following these guys since high school because they did once work with Markiplier and then eventually Game Grumps, and then they branched off to do their own thing. They're very near and dear to my heart, but when I say they're back, you might be wondering, where did they go? Last summer, some allegations dropped. An internet user by the name of Lex Updog basically alleged that the boys from Super Mega facilitated or allowed her sexual assault, or at least that they severely downplayed it to a large degree, on top of overall sharing a bunch of information that made the boys look like complete and utter shit. One of the biggest things that Lex Updog said in her video, outside of course, alleging that they didn't give a shit that somebody they worked with sexually assaulted her, was the fact that she had said the boys made fun of one of their closest friends passing. Back when the boys first started on YouTube, they had a channel called Syndigo, to which it was not only them, but a third best friend that they would create content with, and unfortunately, this best friend had taken their own life, to which Ryan of Super Mega actually found his best friend when it had happened. So really sad stuff all around, and Lex alleged the boys used to make fun of this, and even call Daniel, the boy who passed away, a coward for taking his own life.
Daniel, their friend Daniel, Matt's like at least twice in front of me, separate times we'll hang out with him, has called Daniel a coward. So no, they don't care about suicide. They don't give a shit about suicide. They only give a shit about themselves and who they can make jokes of that are under them that they can get away with.
I followed this drama super closely. The second it came out, I watched Lex's video and I even made a post on my close friends on Instagram. Not that anybody knew what the fuck I was talking about, just basically saying that it sucks when YouTubers get exposed for this kind of thing, because how hard is it to just be a decent human being? Of course, I just wanted to believe the victim, and I had some kind of emotional sentiment towards her. At the same time, I was really curious as to what would happen with Super Mega. Ryan and Matt both respectively released their own statements, and this essentially cleared both of their names. More specifically, Matt, who was really given the bad end of the stick and who was predominantly focused on when Lex was talking about the boys and who did her dirty and whatnot.
To address these allegations head on about me making fun of the side of my best friend, I just want to state that it's just untrue. The person making these claims never knew Daniel. They definitely were not a part of the group that experienced the trauma of losing him, and I think, honestly, it is disrespectful to bring him up as a weapon. I felt like he was just brought into the situation for drama's sake to try to hurt me or Matt or hurt our image. I have done enough to tarnish my image, but I will not stand by and let someone talk lies about the way I talked or treated my trauma in regards to Daniel. The sole focus of all of this should have been about the support that Lex needed and about how we mishandled the situation. All of the attention should have been on Lex. Why Daniel was brought into it, I have no idea. I just wish personally he was left out of this completely.
So they both released these videos vindicating themselves, and then they went silent on the channel, saying they weren't exactly sure where things were gonna go from here. So yeah, there was like a period of mourning where it was like, fuck, Super Mega's really gone. And I'm gonna reiterate that I haven't really like been crazy about them, like watch them. I mean, I always watch a video every now and again, but it's not somebody like that I'm watching every single day of my life. But I was still pretty bummed out once they came out saying that everything that Lex Updog said and all these other people who came together said was just a huge smear campaign. But they're back. They came back. They dropped a music video, which I actually sat down and watched and really enjoyed, and they dropped a couple of other things too, one of which made me emotional, but that's because I'm a little fruity sometimes, alright? There's nothing wrong with having a little bit of fruit in your diet. And yeah, I was just really happy to see the boys back, really happy to see them bounce back, really happy to see that the bullshit that cancel culture tends to propagate did not come to full fruition, that most of it was bullshit, that they are back on YouTube again doing their thing, because I know a lot of people like them. So really good stuff to see. With that out of the way, some really sad news, and something that happened on the 1st of March was that Akira Toriyama had passed away. This is what I mean when I said I feel like there was a lot of like death and devastation this month. But it was just heartbreaking. If you don't know, Akira Toriyama is the artist who created Dragon Ball, a bunch of other prolific works that a lot of people grew up on, that a lot of people grew up with, grew up loving, or came to love eventually. And it was really, really heartbreaking just to see like the wave of sadness that swept over the internet. There were so many people coming together to show their support and share artwork, and I just remember when I got the news, I was devastated. Growing up, I didn't watch Dragon Ball much. I know that my uncle always watched it, and I was always in the room because I knew I liked anime. I just was so young that I didn't understand what was going on. But I have a lot of vital memories and, you know, young enjoyment of me just consuming Dragon Ball. And then eventually when I grew up, I, a couple years back, was in a relationship, and I had sat down and watched all of Dragon Ball a little up until after the Cell Saga. And that was just a really good time because I was spending time with somebody that I loved, drinking sake and eating fucking udon noodles while working on a puzzle set, and it was just always a fond memory. I remember I used to look forward to watching Dragon Ball after getting my shit kicked in at Chipotle for 7 hours straight, and so it was just really heartbreaking. Beautiful to see everybody come together to show their support and share their stories, but just so sad and so unbelievable. He died incredibly young. I believe he was in his 60s, 68 to be exact. So just not an easy pill for any of us to swallow. Rest in peace, Akira Toriyama. I can't talk about this, I'm gonna get emotional. In the next bit of news, Gabby Hanna has made a comeback. Gabby Hanna is a YouTuber, and a couple years back, she was in some controversy for some really insane shit that she was posting. And of course, to be realistic about it, it was obvious that she was having some sort of mental breakdown, and this was being broadcasted and televised as she was chronically online and posting every single aspect of her life, or responding to a lot of negative backlash that she was getting by being so open about her mental illness and whatever she was going through at the time.
Help me! Help me! She might just be the greatest love of all time. Go ahead, baby, gloat.
A lot of people clowned on her. A lot of people made fun of her. A lot of people told her to get offline and go get help. A lot of people felt bad for her. And even though some of the stuff that she was posting was amusing, I definitely felt bad. And I definitely felt like I could kind of relate in a couple ways. But at the same time, I knew that I just wished that she would get fucking help, you know? We mentioned in our last video, like the Twomad video, imagine it was as simple as just getting up and getting help. It's not that way for some people. Some people don't know where to start. Some people are in denial and delusional through that. Some people are so far gone due to brain rot after massive consumption of some sort of drugs. Well, Gabby Hanna took a long break from the internet and came back. Some people are shitting on her now because when she comes back, she basically just promotes a music album, I believe, merchandise, and her Patreon, while saying a whole lot of nothing about how she wishes that a lot of people could just get off the internet, but also that being a creator, you do tend to feel an obligation to stay on the internet. And I also feel that sentiment a lot. Back in the day when I didn't have anything going on in my life, I would take breaks from Instagram like once a month. I'd take like a week or two at a time, and I know that it was good for my brain and I know that it was helpful. But now that I'm actively creating content and trying to make some kind of name for myself, it's a lot harder to get offline or to schedule these breaks for myself. But what can you do? Nothing too controversial there. Welcome back, I guess, Gabby Hanna. So regularly I would talk about the big drama, but I'm just gonna save it for last, and we're actually almost there, and I'm kind of shocked that I haven't recorded a lot. But something that I didn't even write about here was the fact that, let's just touch up on this real quick. Let's just touch up and talk about Twomad for a second. In the last video, I did mention that there was a lot of waves on the internet being made and a lot of people making fun of Twomad after his death, saying that the world was celebrating Twomad's death and was excited that he was no longer here. Now, of course, I was not one of those people. I was shook as fuck and sad as fuck when Twomad was found dead. And even the other day on YouTube, like, one of his videos came up in my recommended, and I literally was like, damn, Twomad is dead, bro. Like, he's still dead. Like, this is the reality of the situation. But basically when that happened, there was a character named Jamesky who alleged that Twomad was a stalker pedophile. Okay, a lot of big words and a lot of big accusations we're throwing here. While a lot of people could see that the stalker allegations might be feasible considering the fact that he would spam message people constantly, calling people up to 40 times a day and texting people 100, sometimes up to thousands of times a day. This included the victim Goldie Bell, who came forward and said that she was sexually assaulted by Twomad. As more things would come out, other people would say the same. Even fellow YouTuber is saying that Twomad was pretty incoherent and delirious, asking for them to plead for his case, or to make YouTube videos proving that he was innocent despite him not being all there to be even able to advocate for himself or give these YouTubers the information that they needed in order to vindicate him. So let's go back to Jamesky, the guy who alleged that Twomad was a stalker and a pedophile. Again, stalker things some people could see, but saying that he was a pedophile with no proof was too far for a lot of people, and I can definitely see that. There had been no solid proof and no word of Twomad being a pedophile, and Jamesky said that he would come back with a Word document that would basically blow the lid off of all of this and expose Twomad for what he truly was. Well, the document dropped, and I'm gonna be honest, I haven't read it. I know other people have, but allegedly it's just full of shit. And I probably should have read the fucking document. I have watched a couple of YouTube videos going into it. That's why I know about this, okay? And I'm gonna leave videos for you like I did in the last recap. I'm also going to leave a link to the document for you in case you want to read and go through that. But from what I've heard and from what I can understand, there is still no definitive proof that Twomad likes children, which is, again, everybody's main issue with these massive allegations. I think the weird thing about the internet these days is that a lot of people don't know what the word mean. And a lot of people will also weaponize that word just so that they could get the one up, or so that they could make somebody look like the absolute scum of the earth, because we all know that PDF files are absolutely disgusting and have no place in our society. It's arguably the most deplorable thing that a human can do. So, on the internet, I noticed lately that it gets weaponized a lot. And I really don't like that, because it can be very confusing, it can be very misleading, and it can be very dangerous to somebody's reputation. This is also why I try to stay away from Twitter outside of consuming news, but I swear to God, once a day I see somebody calling somebody else a under no grounds necessary. And I know that it's just to get under people's skin, and it's just to inflame things further, or just to insult people further. I didn't even write about that Twomad segment, but I just kind of wanted to touch on where that was now, since we did talk a lot about it in our last. Again, I'll be leaving links to everything in any videos that I can give to you guys that will kind of describe it a little bit more, a little better than I did. Oh, we've got 2 more things to talk about. So, the first thing I'm going to talk about, and again, this video is somewhat in no particular order, but Kate Middleton has cancer. That's fucking crazy. I know I was on YouTube and people were coming up with conspiracies saying that she got a BBL, and because she just had gone missing, nobody had seen her for a while. And so there were a whole bunch of conspiracy theories coming out about what had happened to her, until finally she came out with a video saying that she has cancer. And I really don't know shit about the royal family. I don't know shit about Britain, but I just know that cancer sucks and it's really sad. And I'm sure that this woman hopefully has done nothing to deserve that. I don't think anybody deserves cancer. I know that royal family is corrupt as fuck though, baby. I'm pretty sure some of the people in the royal family are like actual people. But yeah, hopefully she didn't do anything crazy. I don't think she did. Cancer is sad. Fuck cancer. And yeah, I just thought that we should talk about it. Oh man, okay, one more thing before we talk about the big thing that's been on my mind. Quiet on Set, dude. This is less internet culture, more everything culture. Quiet on Set is a documentary that basically goes on to explore and expose a lot of things that happened back in the day when Nickelodeon was in its prime. Now, for a long time, it's kind of been known to the public that Dan Schneider is a fucking creep, and that there have been a lot of weird, creepy things that have gone on and that have been showed to us that occurred on Nickelodeon that probably shouldn't have been seeing as children. A lot of feet play, and a lot of things with just inappropriate undertones. Well, Quiet on Set was released, and it's a 5-episode docu-series going into everything, and I watched the entire thing in one night, which was not what I had planned to do, but after watching one episode, I just kept saying, well, let me watch one more, and then I had ended up consuming the entire thing. I can safely tell you that the entire time I watched it, I was pretty fucking nauseous, and I think that the biggest thing, the scariest thing, was the fact that we were all watching this, and I have so many fond memories of watching Nickelodeon, consuming the content as a kid, thoroughly enjoying it, only for it to come out that there was so much dark shit going on behind the scenes. What I noticed was that a lot of people were saying that their childhood was ruined, and I definitely felt that way, but I felt like in a way it went a little deeper than that. It more so feels like the nail in the coffin, the death of a generation, and really just the end of a time period. I remember when I was watching the series, I was kind of looking at the TV and thinking to myself, like, I'm watching this and there are hundreds of thousands of other people who are my age, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger, who also were very fond of these TV shows, these programs, these kids celebrities. And thinking about the fact that we were all watching it together in horror, having these revelations come to us just really wasn't easy, and it was a really intense feeling that I was sitting on for a while. It was dark, dude. It was dark. Before I go on to share a little bit more of my own personal feelings, one of the biggest things to come out of this series was the fact that Drake Bell from the hit TV show Drake and Josh came forward to talk about how he was brutally sexually assaulted by one of the people who was working on set. His name was Brian Peck. There was even a lawsuit that had occurred through this way back in the day, something that was extremely low-key, to the point where over the last several years, everybody knew that there was a child star who was involved and had been assaulted, but nobody technically knew who, of course, until Quiet on Set was released and Drake Bell broke his silence. It was extremely hard to watch. It was one of the harder parts of the series to consume, and yeah, dude, just really sad stuff. On the downside, it was devastating to hear about all these things. Your favorite television shows that you thought were relatively innocent because you in your child mind was innocent, coming out to just be some of the most terrifying experiences for a lot of childhood stars was not an easy pill to swallow for many kids of my generation and the generations following and the generations before me. But on the bright side, on the only bright side, I felt some sort of relief to know that we are living in an age where people can talk about these things, can come forward about these things, and that overall, we're moving into an era where shit like this is no longer tolerated in Hollywood, where there are depravities unmeasured that have been going on for years and years and years. And I think that's kind of like the blessing of the internet, you know? At least the free internet, or in places where the internet is overall a free place where you could use your platforms to raise awareness for shit like this and to talk about shit like this. Now, of course, a lot of people were saying that none of this excuses what Drake Bell did, and apparently Drake Bell got some charges for some text that he was sending to a minor. I don't think that that's okay too. Obviously not. I think he should have minded his own fucking business, but on the flip side, I think it says something that things never went further, considering the fact that people who are assaulted when they're children tend to go on to sexually assault other children in full. Of course, it's not a justification for anything that he did, but I do think that the series gave a lot of people clarity as to what that entire mess was. But also, apparently, a lot of the charges that came out of that case were dropped, and people came to find out that he never put his hands on anybody. Again, still fucked up, still not anything that he should have done, and also his sexual assault doesn't excuse that kind of behavior, but in a way, thank God nothing ever went further, and that he probably came to his fucking senses. And I do think that people can get better, you know? I do think that there are certain lines that are crossed in life that once they're crossed, like, not even God can help you. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, once that line is crossed, it's like, oh, you're not coming back, and also you should kill yourself. I don't think Drake Bell is one of those people, dude. I really don't. Maybe that's controversial for me to say, but I feel for the guy, as a sexual assault victim. I feel for the guy, and all we can do is get better, right? So, now that that is out of the way, we're gonna talk about that big drama that's been on my mind, and I know some people are gonna clock out and be like, "L, I really don't give a fuck about this," but bitch, I have a lot to say. Minecraft YouTubers. Do you play Minecraft? Do you watch Minecraft YouTubers? Who's your favorite Minecraft YouTuber? Let me know in the comments down below. YouTuber and streamer Georgenotfound found in a large amount of controversy after a young lady under the name of Katie Bugs came forward to talk about how she was sexually assaulted by him. Katie Bugs had gone on stream to talk about her story and experience with this YouTuber, Georgenotfound. I don't think she said his name initially. I'm not entirely sure how that information even got out about it being directly about him, but according to Katie Bugs, at some sort of VidCon or video recording YouTuber event, she was sexually assaulted as Georgenotfound was touching her inappropriately and in front of everybody at this VidCon event, or an after party, if you will, on top of the fact that she was made and coerced into underage drinking, causing her to be so fucked up that she didn't really know what to do with herself when she had gotten assaulted. I'm gonna play the clip for you here.
When I resorted to playing games on my phone when it happened, out of nowhere, I felt him slip his hand under my clothes, sitting next to me on the couch in front of everyone. He disguised it with a simple, "Are you ticklish?" I coughed out a no, still staring at my phone. I was overly aware of the fact that we were in front of other people, the fact that everyone else was sitting around us, watching us, including my best friend, and that his hand was inching further to places I hadn't asked for it to be. He made a game out of my embarrassment where he would touch me in certain areas to make me lose the phone game I was playing. I was scared and I felt sick, either from the alcohol or from his touch. It didn't matter because my mind was a blur. I didn't speak or move. I remember being afraid to even breathe. I stayed there for a while, hoping my stillness could make me disappear. I eventually had to stand up after many minutes, for it to stop. I was scared to leave or make a scene out of the embarrassment. Eventually, later in the night, I found myself alone with him and his friend. Everyone else either passed out or sick. I was just so naive, and lucky or not, the night came to an end with just that. I went to leave.
The terms were a little bit vague, I will say that much, but a lot of people were on Katie Bug's side, saying that what had happened to her was disgusting and deplorable, and that they hope she got well soon. Other people were skeptical, just waiting for a response from the alleged offender. Not too long after, Georgenotfound releases his own pre-recorded stream, where he talks about everything from his perspective. Now, from what Katie is saying, she got touched under the shirt, very vague as to where or how, and she was frozen in fear and didn't know what to do with herself and thought that there was a power dynamic at play, which I'm sure to an extent there was. And from Georgenotfound perspective, Katie seemed to be enjoying herself, or at least was chill, even getting up at several points and going right back to the spot that they were cuddling at, causing him to think, well, I guess everything's going okay. Georgenotfound in his second stream also said that he was going to be pretty vague as to not say anything that Katie didn't want him to say, to respect her boundaries and her space. So he says that the only thing that occurred was under the shirt touching.
And also, before I continue, I want to make it clear that the furthest anything ever got was under the shirt touching and cuddling. Now, obviously, people don't typically ask if everything is okay, even such as touching someone's waist under their shirt before they do it. But in this case, I was extremely slow, and she was engaging with me the entire time, laughing, cuddling with me, and even playfully fighting me for the game that we were playing. Again, the quote that she said, he disguised it with a simple, "Are you ticklish?" I coughed out a no. She's implying that it's with malicious intent, and that she coughed out a no would also imply that I should be able to tell that she was uncomfortable with it. She says later, he made a game out of my embarrassment where he would touch me in certain areas to make me lose the game I was playing. Now, I actually remember this quite vividly. I remember she was playing the game, and there were parts where it would be very easy to lose if you were distracted. And she's right, I did do that. There were points where she was playing the game and she was at a point where it was easy for her to mess up, and I would, for example, tickle her or like squeeze her, and when I did this, she would laugh, she would turn around and smile at me, or she would play fight with me because I had just made her lose the game. She also says how I didn't speak or move. I remember being afraid to even breathe. I stayed there for a while, hoping my stillness could make me disappear. Now, to reiterate, anytime that I did this, it was met with her either smiling, laughing, play fighting with me, and there was no reason for me to believe that she was uncomfortable with it. She was not moving. She was not speaking. Of course, I don't believe that silence is consent. I just want to make sure that it is abundantly clear. She was visibly and physically responding well to everything that we were doing. I also want to comment on how she said that she had to stand up after many minutes for it to stop. She did get up multiple times throughout the night. For example, to go to the bathroom, to get a drink. Also, when her friends left, she got up to say goodbye to them, and she would come back to the same scenario. I also just want to point out that her best friend was here during this whole process, then afterwards did leave. And I think it is important to note that she made the choice to stay behind for many hours more. And as I mentioned before, she did get up, say goodbye to them, and came back. We were even talking about staying up to wait until 11 a.m., which was the checkout time of the hotel. Since it was the final day, we were like, oh, I don't know if we want to go to sleep for a few hours, might as well just stay up. But that's not what ended up happening.
He also does apologize and say that he feels as though there's been some sort of misunderstanding, and even says that there were many conversations that him and Katie Bugs had even after the incident, which further made him think that things were all right. But he provided a lot more proof, a lot more screenshots that kind of helped make him look a little better, and also shed some light on the situation that would make you think that it was a complete misunderstanding and something that occurred due to lack of communication, which I personally think is exactly what happened here, but we'll talk more about it later. Not too long after George's stream, he does make a tweet continuing to apologize for making Katie feel the way that she felt. So Katie comes out with another twit longer or a fucking Twitter post or whatever, basically going into further talk about how George is wrong and what he did was wrong and how she's a victim and she can't handle the fact that she's getting so much backlash or that anybody's pushing back at all. And after that, George again comes on Twitter to apologize profusely for how Katie is feeling, but then comes out with another video with even more proof and more evidence that in the very least this was a situation that was misconstrued or misunderstood by the parties involved. I'm summarizing this very greatly, but we're going to talk about my problems later. Once again, he vindicates himself. He talks about his perspective. He still apologizes to Katie for how she's feeling, but he also feels like he shouldn't be taking the brunt of this if it's a situation that she's going back on because now she regrets it. So I'm going to leave a bunch of videos for you guys down below, okay? But here's my moral of the story. I don't think Katie is a bad person, and I don't think Georgenotfound is a bad person either. I truly believe that this was something that was a severe miscommunication, a complete misunderstanding, and I think that it's something that could have been completely avoided altogether. Now, you might be asking, why did people push back on what Katie Bugs was saying in the first place? Well, you see, there's an issue on the internet right now where people can come out with allegations left and right, but a lot of times when people do this, they don't provide proof of the sort. And I understand not providing proof to an extent. I know that sometimes it's not easy. I know that sometimes there's so much shit that happens in real life to which you're not entirely sure of how you can even collect evidence on what has occurred to you. But we're living in a day and age where tragically there are a lot of people who have muddied the waters and who have ruined it for other victims when it comes to talking about their assault and the shit that they've been through. When you're throwing around terms like sexual assault or rape or pedophile, like I mentioned earlier, it's really good to back that kind of a thing up so that everybody is on your side and so that everybody understands as much as they possibly can about the information that you're coming forward with. Something really interesting is that most of this shit can be avoided if you simply leave things anonymous or don't talk about them in general. And I know that that sounds bad, but hear me out. If Katie would have had a conversation before any of this happened with Georgenotfound, from the videos that I've seen, I think Georgenotfound would have completely understood and done some self-reflecting in realizing that maybe he should have just like asked a little bit more when it came to consent, as opposed to just picking up on the vibe. And about picking up on the vibe, I don't know, a lot of these responses kind of fucked me up because it made me feel like there's a lot of people who just don't be fucking. There's a lot of people who just don't have sex or have sexual interactions. In a lot of these videos, Georgenotfound said that he was picking up on her body language and a lot of the context clues that she was giving, which is what made him feel like the cuddling was okay and the under the shirt touching was okay. Apparently, they had been cuddling there for about an hour, maybe even some more time, and in that hour, he slowly but surely was making those small advances, aka putting his hand under her shirts. And again, throughout that hour, there had been moments where she would get up to get another drink or get up to go use the bathroom. And when she came back, it was right back to the cuddle spot that they were at. And this didn't make a lot of sense for a lot of people. Personally, if I'm in an uncomfortable situation and it's like that, if I'm getting up, guess what, bitch? I'm walking, I'm going to the other side of the room, or I'm making people feel uncomfortable because I'm gonna be honest, I have a problem saying no. I have a hard time standing up for myself or vocalizing when I'm uncomfortable. But if there's one thing that I can do, it's that I can make you feel uncomfortable as fuck. Or do something that would kind of give you that incentive to think, okay, maybe I should back off. Another interesting thing that people keep pointing out was the fact that Georgenotfound was fucked up too. And in the clip I showed earlier, nobody at this YouTuber party was promoting further drinking because everybody was already sloshed to begin with. Were there drinks there? Yeah, but nobody was like, yeah, you need to drink, you need to drink. As a matter of fact, it was the girls or Katie Bug's group who were insisting on playing drinking games, which is just important to note. It's important to note. Furthermore, I definitely understand picking up on the vibe, and I think that there are a lot of decent people who simply do this when it comes to sexual interactions. Now, I'm gonna be very honest with you. Personally, I do ask if this is okay or if that is okay every single time I'm doing anything sexual, but I think at this point it's because I've seen too much shit and I don't ever want to make girls feel uncomfortable because I know what it's like to be made felt uncomfortable by a guy. To give Katie more credit, this was her first time ever doing anything with a guy. There was, you know, no experience really to go with that. And I think that part of the reason that I can't talk is because I have so much experience. Do you get what I'm saying? But I also feel like I can't talk because I do have a lot of experience as somebody who constantly has to make the first move, and also somebody who is a victim of sexual assault. I do think that George should have just been more careful at the end of the day, because when you are a content creator, somebody that has any kind of power, it's not like this is high school anymore. You have to be extremely careful, and you have to be extremely vocal about what you're doing, and constantly asking if things are okay, whatever, in order to avoid situations like this happening. But there's even a point where George says that he watched her original stream and was tuned in, locked in, until he realized, holy shit, she's talking about me. This guy didn't even know that what he did was wrong because of the context clues that he thought that he could follow, and because of the fact that they would, you know? And I only say that because I don't think that this George guy is a monster. If this motherfucker was a monster, if he did some really, really dark, fucked up shit, and you could tell that this motherfucker knew that he did it, I'd be like, get him, get his ass, you know, let's fucking burn his house down. Like, you know, all of it, the full 9, okay? But I genuinely don't think that his intentions were to fuck this girl up, or to ruin her life, or to sexually assault her. Something else that's been very interesting to see is the fact that a lot of people who are sexual assault victims are saying that this is not sexual assault. But pause on that. Nobody knew what under the shirt touching meant. At some point, George did say hand on her stomach, so people thought hand on her stomach. Well, fast forward to literally a week ago, Katie Bugs finally comes on stream one last time to give all the information that she didn't give the first 3 times, or the first 2 times that she made separate statements. She says that she was touched on her chest area. In this stream, she is extremely angry and extremely frustrated the way that things have been handled. She further voices her frustrations by saying it's not fair that people are picking apart her story, or asking for a lot of information, or asking for proof and screenshots. She just wants people to believe her and take her story at face value. She also says that George has admitted to sexually assaulting her, and I don't think that that's necessarily the case either. When George apologizes and says sorry for Katie and the way that she feels and for the things that happened that night, I think that he's apologizing for the fact that he was not careful enough or considerate enough asking for how she was feeling constantly. But I don't think he said, oh, I'm sorry I sexually assaulted you, because I'm sure that he doesn't feel as though it was 100% sexual assault, considering all of the context that he had been given. Well, Katie digresses, saying that he agreed to it. He agreed to the fact that it was sexual assault. He admitted to it. He admitted to him sexually assaulting her. He admitted to the things that happened that night, but in a lot of ways, he still vindicated what was being thrown at him. And he still at least is able to explain that in the very least, he should have done better in just being more vocal and communicative when it came to this situation. A lot of people were then upset with this stream, wondering why it was that she didn't say everything initially. Why it was that now, the 3rd time around, was when she wanted to come out with the full story. People were upset that the story kept changing. People were confused. People were tired of talking about it. And I'm sure that in a way, I'm tired of talking about it. But we're gonna get to my final points in a minute. What's one of the biggest issues right now? I kind of sound like I'm victim blaming, don't I? I'm not necessarily victim blaming. I think that this situation could have been handled a slew of other ways. A lot of other people are victim blaming, and then you have people who are sexual assault victims saying this was not sexual assault, this was a misunderstanding that you now are coming forward about and that you are upset about. There are people who are saying you got caught in a moment that you regretted, and now that you regret it, you're trying to ruin this man's career. There are people saying that tragically, when you come forward with allegations like this on the internet, for somebody who is such a big streamer, you do need all the proof, and it needs to be all in the pudding in order for people to believe you. Because like I started the story off with, we are living in a day and age where there are a lot of people, a lot of false prophets, if you will, who have come forward with stories and who have been unable to provide any sort of proof, weighing such heavy allegations at people of power, only for it to come out that it was all false. And the most damning thing that this does is ruin shit it for other victims. As we can see, and as we could see by Katie Bug's story, I can understand not wanting to be questioned. There are a lot of people who say, well, it's fucked up. How are you gonna make a victim of sexual assault recount everything that she's been through? And I get that, because sometimes when you get sexually assaulted, you disassociate, or years pass and you try to forget that it happened. But again, when it comes to publicizing something like this, and when it comes to including such big names and such big people, in the very least, you can't expect that people are just gonna be on your side and take your word for it 1000%. It's fucked up, but it's the reality of the game, you know? It's just the way that things are. In Katie's last stream, she again vocalizes a lot of discomfort, saying that she's glad that there are other victims that she's been able to connect with, but that she feels as though a lot is ruined for her. Streaming and something that she's loved and playing Minecraft is ruined for her. And once again, I just think it all could have been avoided if she had a conversation with George in the very least before she came forward talking about this stuff. I think it would have provided a lot of clarity, and I think that it would have maybe even gave her some sort of closure that she needed and understanding what exactly happened. Oh, there's something else that was really controversial, and it was that she said she was freshly 18 when all of this occurred, and that really rubbed people the wrong way, because if you're 18, you're 18, and also when I was 18, I was fucking around with people of all kinds of ages. I do understand that older people who go for like 18-year-olds are weird, but George did not know her age initially, and yeah, he should have been more careful, maybe whipping out the old IDs, but he was under the impression that she was 21 since he was drinking, etc, etc. But now that that's out of the way, so on the topic of sexual assault, I'm gonna be honest with you. When I heard about all of this, I know that sexual assault counts as unwanted sexual touching, like that's any sort of sexual assault. I totally get that. You know, this story definitely muddies some fucking waters. I think what gets me the most is just the fact that, like, they were cuddling for such a long amount of time, and I understand not being able to vocalize, like, I don't like this, but the fact that she would get up to go get something and come right back is what kind of gets me, or kind of makes me think, like, girl, you know, what the fuck? Like, girl, what the fuck? And, you know, we're gonna get a little personal here. I am a sexual assault victim. I've been sexually assaulted a couple of times. It's happened more than once. At this point, maybe you think I'm trying to break some sort of fucking record. And dark humor, alright? Dark humor to cope. But I don't think that Katie Bugs is a bad person. I think she's young. I think she needs the frontal lobe to cook for a little bit longer. And I think that if that were to happen, or if she was a little bit more patient, if she had a couple of conversations with people, George included, all of this could have been avoided, because it's, you can't deny that this kind of scrutiny and being under this kind of lens when going through a time of understanding what had happened to you is not easy for any sane human being. I think she could have saved herself a lot of personal trauma and turmoil if conversations just would have had, or if she just would have at least waited a little bit longer to get her story together, to get the proof that she wanted to get, and then to just release a really, you know, semi-well-constructed video about her feelings on the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? But this story honestly just felt like the consequences of not being careful enough when you're an e-celeb, and also the consequences of going through a sexual experience that you end up seriously regretting later on, while also letting it fester and not talking about it with the person that you experienced it with, then culminating to these feelings of anguish festering over time as you watch somebody with such a successful platform just continue to blow up and continue to do well, therefore causing you to feel the need to blow the top off of this and to expose them. I'm gonna tell you a story. I have the laptop here now because I have some stuff to read, but I identify with Katie Bugs in this case of seeing somebody who's big just get bigger, feeling like they genuinely wronged you, and wanting them to perish because of it, and wanting to do something or tell a story that would make them look really fucking bad. So I'm gonna tell you the story. So as I said, sometimes when we see somebody who wronged us in a place of success that's massive, we begin to act up. So I knew this girl when I was 16 and she was about 24 years old. I'm going to give as little detail as possible and you'll see why later, but we worked together and would end up becoming really good friends. As you can see, there's a bit of an age difference there. I might have even been 15 instead of 16, but I don't remember and I don't have the proof, so we'd have to dig deep for that. There were some times where she would openly flirt with me, and there was even a point where I was at her house and she said that she wished that her mom would leave and that she wished that the house was empty so that we can do some things and experiment a little bit. At the time, I was sexually active, so I kind of understood what she meant, but I was also at the point where I was still scared of shooting my shot with women, so I just kind of let these comments like roll off of the shoulders and I didn't think much about it. So yeah, like small verbal advancements like that were left on the back burner. I just kind of ignored it, and I just really wanted to be close to her all the time. I enjoyed her presence and I enjoyed working with her. Eventually we had a falling out. I tried to reach out a couple of times to apologize for the way that I handled things, and I never got a response. It never worked out, and I'm sure that's for a reason, but what ends up happening? 2 years ago, I see that she's doing fucking great on Instagram, and that shit pisses me off. On my close friend story, I basically talked about, I called her a groomer. I probably shouldn't have done that, but look, it was on the close friends, okay? But I talked about how this person who is now a clout goblin, who has a lot of clout, who is doing well on Instagram, had flirted with me a couple of times when I was younger. There were a couple friends who reached out and asked what the @ was in hopes of canceling her, starting a smear campaign, asking me if I was down for that. And I said no. And there was a significant reason for that at the time. And it may have been completely selfish to some people, but it was that I wouldn't be prepared for any pushback or scrutiny that I would be receiving. I wouldn't be mentally prepared for whatever fallout would come from me talking about these things. And I also didn't want to come out with this due to lack of evidence. A lot of the shit that she said was, you know, in real life. And then I have a couple of notes that say, let's be honest, or you're super cute, but that could be honestly just construed as a really close friend who thought that I was sexy. Now, of course, the only thing that I have that's like, oh my god, a big deal was the one time she said, I wish my mom was gone so that we could scissor a little bit. She didn't even say that. She just said so that we could experiment. What are we experimenting with? Crystal meth? What are we experimenting with? Will we be chefing it up in the kitchen? You know, it could go any way, and I was aware of that. So I wasn't about to come forward with a story that I had no proof about, and that I wasn't ready to deal with any sort of fucking, like backlash, you know? It was not worth starting shit, and it was not worth opening Pandora's box. Especially since she never laid a hand on me, which I will acknowledge differs from the Georgenotfound situation. But at the end of the day, that person knows what she said, and she knows that it was inappropriate, I'm sure. And in our older ages, I'm sure that she now knows she shouldn't have been at the big age of 24 speaking like that with a 15/16-year-old. And it might even be the reason why she never reached out to any of my messages today. Like, some people either can't face that shit, or maybe she just knew that I was mentally unstable and didn't want to deal with my ass. So there are two pathways. Number one is that she learned, while again, that could have been one of the many reasons that she never spoke to me whenever I reached out apologizing, while having full conversation about what she did was wrong, but also not being able to confront it. And the other pathway is that I know what she said. God knows what she said. If there really was a need for divine retribution or for karma to come back at her for what she said to me, even if it's a little tiny bit of karma, then he's in charge of that. I'm not. I'm not fucking doing all that. I'll have no hand in that kind of karma, and that's fine by me. If someone's watching this thinking that I'm wrong in the vein of saving other people who might be victims of this person too, I'm gonna be honest and say a lot like how I feel about Georgenotfound. I don't think that this individual is a bad person. And I'm almost positive that she hasn't done anything like this with any other person, as what connected us in the first place was the fact that we were both artists in a very small town where you don't come across artists often. By the time we finally met each other, not just passing each other in the halls of the high school that we went to for a year together, she was in college doing big girl shit, mingling in her life and in her everyday things. To make matters even more understandable, or to give you even more context, this was a time where it really wasn't that big of a deal for adults and teenagers to have friendships and speak to each other. And it's a tragedy because I would end up being a victim of a lot of other things that older men have put me through, but this was still that time, like that no man's land where like older people would talk to younger people, and then sometimes one thing would lead to another, and it's not okay. And it's crazy how if I would have just collected so much evidence when I was a kid of other things that happened with other guys, holy shit, some motherfuckers would be doing time right now. But this was just a time, and society has changed so much that, you know, now it's a big deal. Now I probably could have gotten more justice or could have seen that it was not something that was okay. Like, I got taken advantage of. Like, I'm a victim. You a victim. You a victim. I didn't know it at the time, but those guys know it now, and I'm sure that they know that they're going to hell. As previously mentioned, I'm gonna be vulnerable and say that I am a victim of all kinds of sexual assaults. I've been brutally sexually assaulted by a boyfriend. In that same instance, it was the closest I ever got to a near-death experience. I've been in situations where I vocalized not wanting to have sex multiple times before intoxication to only somehow end up in a situation, a sexual situation that I did not want to be in, that I would then have to process. Something that's happened with friends that are really hard to confront because this is people or a person that I appreciated and loved with my whole heart. The mouthful to say that I've been in situations that were confusing as fuck but traumatizing at the same time. I wrote a lot here about my experience with sexual assault, but I'm not gonna air the rest out because I'm just not comfortable. But you just gotta know that it's happened so many times. So many things have happened that shouldn't have happened with older guys when I was underage. And in more recent times, there were people who I thought were really good friends that I'd known for years and since high school who took advantage of me. And it's just been hard, dude. It's been really hard. And all that to say, I think to an extent, I don't think Katie completely understands the concept of like sexual assault versus like being in an uncomfortable situation that is essentially a misunderstanding. Being in an uncomfortable situation that she regretted long after it had occurred. And I'll give some more credit to her where it's due because there are moments where even after, you know, their cuddling incident happened, her friends were texting her like, oh, are you good? And she's like, well, it was a little weird, like, I don't know, just try to shake it off. And I get that, like, I get situations, sexual situations being like that, but I don't think that it should have been blown up to the extent that it should have been blown up, in the very least, for her own peace of mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, for her own comfort and for the sake of not sacrificing herself. I'm so hungry, I need some water. And similarly to the story that I mentioned earlier about the friend that I had, sometimes we become really, really angry and overcome with hatred when someone that we feel wronged us becomes extremely successful or even somewhat successful. And with no frontal lobe development and a bunch of yes men around who also don't know what the fuck they're talking about, it's gonna lead into Katie acting the way that she did or reacting the way that she did by getting on stream, extremely emotional, telling her story, and then getting grilled for it because in this day and age, tragically, people want proof. I'm reading off the script for what I wrote, which is why I keep looking down. Y'all are just gonna have to deal with it for now. In Katie's final stream, she says, do you think I wanted to come clean about this and have people treat me this way? Do you think that even the good comments was something that I wanted over such a traumatic situation? And Katie, whether you did or you didn't, you need to understand that this is the internet. Anytime you put out absolutely anything, no matter how vulnerable or positive, it can and will be picked apart. Something I will reiterate again is that if Katie would have just spoken to Georgenotfound personally about this, I think she could have really avoided so much more pain and discomfort and chaos. And from everything that I've seen, George seems like an alright kid. He doesn't seem like a bad, evil person. I think he would have been completely understanding, sympathetic, apologized for any confusion. Things would have been fine right then and there, and they both could have just learned something about themselves and the world around them from that situation. But this girl, listen to how crazy this is. This girl has objectively tainted her own career by coming forward with these allegations that could have very well ruined this man's life. It's loss and it's loss. Like, nobody would have won, and there are no winners in this situation. Not that there should be a winner, but just that everybody's hurt and even more traumatized in the end. In today's day and age, we say that we need to believe all victims, and I am an avid believer of this, but I also really think that it's important to ensure that this person can back up what they're talking about, at least in the slightest, and especially considering the fact that just like any victim, a creator can become a victim of something that is a straight up lie. Or in this case, something that was a complete misunderstanding. And maybe I'm like terrible, like maybe I'm the fucking worst for this, maybe I really am El the Devil for this, but I do think that this is just as important as a victim getting justice for something heinous that's happened to them. You know, we've heard stories of people who are falsely accused of rape before, of sexual assault, of murders, of all kinds of fucked up things, and then their lives are ruined. They go to jail for a long amount of time for a crime that they didn't do. And while this is few and far between, it is something that happens. My only point in bringing it up. On the internet, it's hard because it's like there's no legal anything. Like, it's just people talking. It's just chaos. But because Katie came forward with a story, shared no proof until later, further proof that was debunked by her alleged abuser, and because she's been ruthless towards someone who was also in a position of drunkenness when the situation occurred, someone who objectively had no clue that she felt so shitty about it, despite having countless chill conversations following the incident, the fact that he had no idea up until now, up until all of this was blown up for the world to see, she's now being seen as an unreliable narrator, even a liar and a clout chaser by the more ruthless side of the internet. All pain and confusion that could have been avoided if a conversation was had about a situation that was not completely sexually assault, but was just confusing. I think the fact that Georgenotfound was also extremely fucked up is kind of like what gets me too. Like they were both drunk, they were both sloshed. If he was completely sober, again, like that just changes everything. There's all these little details that matter, really matter in a story like this. And another thing that I want to stress that I wrote in my notes is that if Georgenotfound was truly a degenerate creep who hooked up with fellow streamers who are freshly 18 the way that he did with Katie, there would be so many more stories that would have been popped up by now. The same way we often see this occur when one victim comes forward and the rest come together to share traumatic experiences surrounding the perpetrator. In Katie's last stream, she alleges to this, to saying that there's more that people don't know, but nothing else has come out since Katie has come forward about Georgenotfound being a degenerate creep or a sexual assaulter. And I think that that's really interesting. I do not think Georgenotfound is a bad guy, and I don't think that Katie's bad either. Just really jumped the gun and should have gotten more advice before she went forward with this. Maybe should have talked about it a little bit more through therapy before making such rash decisions. Now, a couple things more to address. Like I mentioned before, one of the biggest things in this case was Katie mentioned that she was freshly 18 when the incident occurred. And first of all, what the fuck is freshly 18? Get off of Twitter and reevaluate your life, because unless this guy has been preying on you for the last 5 years, there's no reason to dramatize the fact that you're 18 years old, that you're freshly 18. And Katie in her last stream says that she said this by accident, but the damage had already been done, and people on Twitter went crazy for this, calling George a creep and even a pedo. Like I mentioned, not only was he aware of her age until after the fact, and of course he should have been more careful, but if an 18-year-old wants to sleep with somebody older than them, then that's simply and wholeheartedly up to her. Is the person who's down with sleeping with the 18-year-old a little bit weird? Yeah, in a fucking porn-riddled society, in a Coomer brain society, where young women are romanticized, you could definitely call a guy weird, but it's not illegal. And they are legally not a pedophile. If you saw the dudes I was hooking up with when I was 18 years old, you would fucking hurl, to be honest with you. And that's all I could say about that. If you saw the dudes that knew how old they were, you would fucking hurl. Man, dude, Katie's sexual assault is fucked up, dude, but if she saw what the fuck I went through every time I was sexually assaulted, I think she'd fucking hurl, man. Like, and it's ironic that I say that because there's a take that the streamer Destiny had where he pretty much says, oh, well, wasn't this like a learning lesson for you? Like, you learned something and you move on, and it could have been so much fucking worse, right? Like, it could have been so much worse. And to an extent, I kind of get that, dude. And it's not to play like Pain Olympics or Oppression Olympics or whatever, but this situation could have been so much worse, and Georgenotfound could have literally been like a sexual predator and deviant and really could have fucked her entire life up. but I don't think that that was the case. I just think that two people were drunk and that things got a little weird and that a conversation should have been had before she blew this shit up on the internet. And to touch on something more when it comes to being famous person and dating, I've acknowledged the fact that if I ever blow up, and once I do blow up, like, let's just manifest it, the blowing up part, but I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of my girlfriends start to come out the woodwork talking shit, and I wouldn't blame them. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them is like, El the Devil probably gave me HPV, okay? Or, hey, I know El the Devil, he love bombed me, and then he dumped me a month later. I wouldn't be surprised if that would happen, because if I were to blow up, I know some people would be mad, like, why is this crusty, dusty ass motherfucker getting all this attention when he did this to me? I get it. So, better yet, or even worse, I think that when I go into dating in the future, like, if I ever blow up and I start dating, like, I think it's gonna be something that I'm gonna have to be super, super careful about, even more careful about than I already am, so that I don't end up in a situation like this one, a situation of misunderstanding. I definitely understand a lot of people saying that when it comes to sex, like, a lot of the times people pick up on vibes and people do this and that. I guess to an extent, I don't really relate because every time I'm with a girl, every 5 seconds I'm like, is this okay? Is this good? So bad, dude. It's so bad. Let me rizz you up, mommy. Is it okay if I rizz you up? Is that all right? Like, everything. But again, because I have a vagina, I know what that's like, to be felt uncomfortable with a guy. And that's a completely different life experience, okay, than I assume what Georgenotfound has gone through. But again, I don't think he's evil. I don't think Katie Bugs is evil. I think the way that Katie Bugs is trying to make Georgenotfound seem like he's an evil, vindictive motherfucker is not true. I just think he's a man trying to defend himself so that his career is not ruined by a misunderstanding. And that's all I have to say about it. Leave your comments down below. What the fuck do you think? I can't believe I had that much to say. And we've gone on long enough for this video, and I've recorded a lot more than I thought that I would. But I did. I will be leaving links to everything down below. One of the main reasons, on top of the fact that I haven't been home, that I haven't uploaded a video, is because I've been overcome with the big video that we're working on, and I didn't even think I told you guys the title, so I'm gonna tell you right now. It's called The Greatest Video Game You've Never Heard Of, and I'm really excited. We recorded 4 hours worth of footage. I've been shaving it down and working on it right now. I might come out with another upload before we do that one, just so that I'm not leaving this channel dry as fuck, because I've been uncomfortable with doing that. But yes, big video is in the works. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about these stories. Let me know if you think I'm fucking crazy or an assaulter apologist. Just tell me about something that happened this month that affected you, or if anything on this list really sat with you a certain kind of way. But until then, be good, do good, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care of yourselves, and in the very least, we will be together at the end of April for the April recap. So, bye!